to our CI stories. So if anybody has any questions for Judy today, please go ahead and put them in the chat. If you're watching this on the replay, you can also add them to the comments afterward, and I'll forward them on to Judy. But today we're on our second episode of our CI Stories interview series. If you haven't heard, we do 2 of these interviews a month, talking about with teachers who are in CI, everyday teachers. This is the second one for January. Our next one is not going to be until, let me check the date right here really quick. February 6th is the next one, and we'll be speaking with Shauna. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. I believe it's Shauna Sash from Canada. So we'll be speaking to her in a couple of weeks. But until then, we have Judy. So let's go give her a warm welcome, and I'll put her right on in just a second. Here we go. Welcome, Judy. How are you doing today?
Hi, welcome. Thank you. I'm doing just fine. It's
Awesome.
7 o'clock here, so I'm kind of winding down.
I hear you. It's 5 o'clock where I am, but I just got home and I'm exhausted. Can't wait to have dinner afterwards. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we go ahead and get started.
I'm a native German speaker. I came here to Quincy in 2016, and I've been teaching all ages really here at a college level. Children from 0 to 8 with music lingua, and that's where I found TPR and Krashen's theories. That's kind of what introduced me first. And then this is my second year as a high school teacher, German high school teacher, and I also teach elective in middle school. And I just started now with French as well as elective in the middle school.
Awesome. And what state do you teach in?
Illinois.
Illinois. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So you said that music lingua is what first inspired you to look at comprehension-based teaching?
Yes, so I actually wanted to open up an immersion preschool first, and then the Q&D job, the high school job just fell into my lap, and I really love my high schoolers now. And so as soon as I knew I was gonna teach a different age, different grade levels, I started researching. But Music Lingua introduced me to Krashen, and that kind of started my research, where I then found different podcasts, different mentors, conferences, where I started to learn more. And I just knew I didn't want to do grammar-based or legacy-based learnings. That's how we do it in Germany. And you know your grammar, you're really good at that. But the comprehension part, talking to the people, I don't believe that comes from that kind of teaching. That comes from being in the class with the families. I learned probably English with the families, American families, as I was babysitting. So immersion.
Yeah.
So I knew that's what I wanted to start, and that's kind of how I found CI.
Awesome. Yeah, the preschoolers though would scare me. The youngest I've done was
Mhm.
11, and that was scary for me. I taught high school for 11 years and then went to middle school. And that first 11-year-old coming into class was like, oh my God, I'm so used to 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Then to have an 11-year-old was terrifying to me. I definitely couldn't do preschoolers or elementary at all. That's way too challenging for me.
Yeah, my youngest student is 1, and my oldest student is probably in the 70s.
Oh my
So I
God.
still teach at the college level non-credit courses for the community. So I think I'm pretty flexible,
Yeah.
and I really love all the ages. It's just a little bit different approach. So with a 0 to 8, we use a lot of music, of course, and the gestures, and that's what I learned there. Prompts, a lot of prompts, repetition, so circling questions, true and false. That's what I started doing there. So
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Have you ever taught traditionally, or has it always been with some kind of immersion comprehension based instruction?
when I first started in 2016, I just bought an Amazon German book for my high schoolers. I was teaching the local homeschool group, And then also the adults, they really want the original, like the old way of teaching. Most of them, because I ask them, do you prefer a book or can we just kind of, authentic conversations? And they're like, oh, I want to have a book. I want to see what I'm doing. And so I do both. And I think I still have to find my own way. When I came into the classroom first, I wanted to do it all CI, and I realized the students, because I came in after another teacher, they had no idea and it was so different. So I really challenged them. Um, so I do use the digital framework with it, but not grammar based.
And I'm with you there too, because I just went back to high school. I started back in high school this year, and they are really firmly based in the textbook. And then my students, now that I still teach with comprehension based methods. I have to use the textbook, but I just take what I need to teach out of the textbook and teach it with comprehension based methods. But my kids, like yours, they weren't used to that. So I really challenged them by having those conversations and getting them to do stories and getting them to read more real life texts and not ones from the textbook that were some of them were artificially created and might be a little bit too difficult for them, really weren't written for their level or their interest level at least. So yes, I completely understand how that is. That's been my challenge right now. And my first semester went horribly badly, just the difference of kids. And then this semester so far, we're 2 weeks in, and it's been going really, really well. My level ones are amazing right now. They're just falling right in line because they didn't have any
Mine
experience
as
with
well.
anything before, so they're enjoying that. So we're having good times with that. Is there any specific strategies or activities that you find are really helpful in your class that you like to use?
I'd do the calendar talk, weekend talk, PQAs, personal questions. I start with a list of questions, but then usually they don't realize it at the end of our activities when we're done. I just kind of sit around with them and I just start talking in German and ask them questions about their life. And sometimes they don't realize that they actually do answer back in German, without even thinking, because it's like the low effective filters. They're not stressed out. Um, and then sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, we have all this stuff to do, and then we just keep on talking in German because I kind of want to avoid the work, and then they don't realize that is the work. The questions, the communication. That's really, I think, the emphasis. We have German students coming soon, and I want my students to be able to ask questions and talk to them a little bit.
Yeah.
um, um, Lately, I started kind of loosen it up a little bit and adding more games to it as well, and they really seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, we
What else do I do? Um, hmm. I think I started the free write this year as well, and I do want to do more reading. We just read the first novels, so they have never read a book before I came. Um, so I try to implement it more, but there's never enough time really to do like the free reading. It seems 45 minutes, and we have to pray first, and then until they're settled, and then I do a little bit of bell ringer. That's what's called, right? Bell ringer when you come in. Usually it's like the questions, personal questions, and then it seems like there's like not enough time for it.
Yeah, my when I taught middle school, we were 45 minutes. We're now on a block, so I teach them for an hour and a half, but I only have them for a semester. So even though it seems like I have a lot of time, I don't. I did a novel last semester and it didn't go so well. It took way too long for the time, and they lost interest. So it's difficult when you don't have a lot of time. And I completely understand about talking in
Yeah.
a target language. The kids think they're off track. As long as my only goal is when I walk into a classroom is to speak the target language as much as possible and make it comprehensible. And anything that comes out of that is good. And the kids think when they get me off track that they
Yeah.
won, but really it didn't matter because we're speaking in the target language. So it's a really great way to get them engaged and kind of get them to forget about that they're learning a language, that they're actually communicating in a language other than their own, which is an amazing thing.
Yeah, and like you, my last years when I first started, I would say my confidence wasn't up. I didn't know the expectations. learning. I want to do everything, and it's just too much, and then just learning. And also the challenging behavior last year um, made it really hard. But this year, I think the new classes, I knew better what I want out of it, and they came with interest already. They want to learn. They want to learn about the culture. So they
That's
want to be able to speak. And I can't say it too loud, but I was really, when they were arguing and kind of saying not so nice words to each other, I'm like, okay, that's not, I didn't teach them these words, of course, but I was kind of proud that they were arguing in German.
awesome. Well, we have Richard May Martinez has a question. Let me go ahead and put it up on the screen here. I work with upper division students. Do you find it a challenge to teach in a CI format for advanced low and intermediate low mid students without it feeling too repetitive?
Um, I do CI, and then with the circlings of questions, I do stop when I see the engagements going down. And I try to ask questions to all the students and then just pick on one. But once I realize that the engagement is going down, I stop, and then they usually do like independent work after that. So it's a little bit of a challenge, the all these repetitions to do them because there's like the advanced, I'm like, oh, not again, I already know this. And the others, I'm like, I still don't have a clue.
Yep.
They didn't even know what I was talking about. Um, so once I know that engagement is not there no more, then we'll do something else.
It's a great response. And I'll just add on to that some things that I do. Like I have a class that's challenging right now because I've got 8 kids in the class, and 4 of them are native speakers, and the other ones have varying degrees of level of understanding of Spanish. But what I tend to do when I do upper levels is, first of all, the circling, the repetition. I only circle the new stuff or the stuff that they've forgotten. That's what I do. But also, I do less stories and I do more conversations, like what Judy talked about earlier. Just
Right,
engage them in conversation. So I tend to do a lot more conversations with my students in the upper levels because it's easier in a conversation to incorporate that complex grammar where it's not so easy in a story. It's harder. um, German doesn't have subjunctive the same way that Spanish and French do, but it's hard to put in a story lots of times that subjunctive and make it sound natural without it feeling like you forcing it in there. Whereas in a conversation, I can put it in really naturally because it just comes out. So it's a great question, Richard. Thank you for asking it. So you have those 2 different ideas on how you can apply that. Excellent,
and you
excellent,
said the
excellent.
grammar word.
Yep. Any challenges that you've had since transitioning to comprehensible input that you have
Well, I
faced?
really didn't transition like at the high school level because that was my plan right away. Um, but yeah, the challenge is there's just so much information out there. I think we're really kind of blessed that have abundance of mentor teachers out there who I follow and conferences, and because I wanted to do it all, so that was my challenge and realizing I can't do it all. What fits to me? And then the idea is also I cannot be like you or like this teacher what I see on videos, and I need to find my personality, what fits to me, and then also adapt to the students. Like with my German 1 students, they love to do stories. They understand the stories, they comprehend them, and they like to play it out. And they also create their own stories, versus my German 2s probably don't want to really do that.
Yep.
They just really want to pass. Um, so those are the challenges. Wanting to do it all. How do I fit it in? And are the students ready for it?
Yeah, Judy said something that was really amazing. So I just want to put up here. I love it. She said something that's so true that you can't be someone else. So you might see Blaine Ray or Karen Rowan or somebody doing TPRS or some kind of comprehensible La Maestra Loca in Spanish. You can't be that person. And a lot of people feel like I can't be that person, so I can't do it at all. And what Judy said was really key. You have to find how you can take it. So when we started, back when I started, there wasn't called comprehensible input. It was called, TPRS was the only way to do comprehensible input, to deliver it at the time. And we branched out. So now there's lots of different activities, lots of different approaches, and you can take what you feel is comfortable for you and use that. And I know many years ago, at the national TPRS conferences, Blaine and his son Vaughn used to teach the beginning level classes. And what we found out was people were so intimidated because they're so darn good at it that people thought, that's wonderful what they're doing. I see how it works, but I can't do that because I'm not that kind of personality. And so they didn't try it at home in their own schools. So we found other people to put them in to teach that beginning level class, and put Blaine and Vaughn in a more advanced class so that people could say, oh, yes, they're just like me and I can do that too. So I think that's a really key thing. And that's one of the reasons that we're doing this whole series, is so that people can see that everyday teachers are doing this, not just mentors or gurus or anything like that. So I really loved what Judy said about she had to find her own personality, and that she couldn't be that person or this person. She had to find what worked for her. And that's what we all need to do, is find what works for us. I have made lots of changes in the 20 some years I've been doing this, and I've taken bits of this person and bits of that person and found what worked here and found what didn't work there. And I'm constantly adapting. Even this year, I've made changes to what I did from the previous year. So I think that's a really key thing. Thank you for pointing that out. What do you think about your overall? Because you said you teach from 1 to 70. How do you think about the overall proficiency levels that you're getting, especially when you compare it to the way that you were taught languages in Germany? Because it's very, in Europe, they're
Mhm.
starting to come around. We have the Agen workshop in Europe, to get Europeans more involved in the CI movement, but Europe is still very traditional in the way that it teaches.
Um, Not against my nice teachers back then, but I probably did not learn a whole lot of English from them. She actually told me I couldn't speak American English, and I started babysitting was 10 years old, and I think that's where I learned it. I maybe learned some grammar and maybe some new words. I had to write them 10 times each new word. Um, the other students came to me and asked me about comprehension about a text, but then I actually had the D and they had the A. So I don't think it does. What is your goal? Is your goal to learn the grammar? I think it's a totally different skill set as well. Just like the translation, I'm actually in Germany. I'm a foreign language correspondent, so I did the translation a lot more. Is that your goal, or is your goal communication, going in the country, being able to tell them what you need? Um, so I think I just learned because I wanted to. I always loved America, so I knew I for some reason I think I'm made that way that I learn it quickly. But So that's the difference. My youngest children or my youngest students, um, they learn it only they hear me once a week only. So if they're not doing it at home, then I know that there's not a whole lot of coming out. I have a little 6-year-old. She's been with me 3 years now, and we've been doing the music lingua. So that's 2 years. So from 3 to 4 to 6, and then we did another year elementary class with her, and she's starting to giving me some output, but she's also very anxious. Um, so it takes a while until the little ones, until you actually hear it. So I'm not trying to push it, but the comprehension when I speak, when I say, "Can you show me this in German?" or you know, show me on the picture what is, where's this person or what is this object? They know all that. And I think just hearing the language will then later on help them. I heard the language the first time English was 3 years old. And I think that helped me to acquire it faster. And I think even music lingo, I think it's a great to explore. It's not, if you don't do it all the time in immersion and other ways, it's not gonna do it all alone. The parents have to help. just the environment super hard here in America. So the environment needs to help and also value language. And I think that's we don't value language learning as much here. Um, so that's when I see the younger ones. I know the middle schoolers when I have them for 4 or 5 weeks only. But if they want to learn, they're really good at it. They're really getting it. And I started this one class. I told her I would talk about it, but they wrote a whole book on their own. So it was a
Awesome.
little help with me.
Yeah.
It's a really funny book. That was actually story asking book, and I was so proud of myself when I first heard, story asking, and they actually done it because they wanted. So it's the interest level. What do I want? Do I really want to learn this? That's really big. But I do believe that if we start young children early on, that they just listen to it. It's a listening skill that this will help.
It's the same thing with babies.
Um,
They listen for the first 18 months to 2 years before any words start coming out. They really need that silent period, and as they get older, the silent period can be shorter, but they still need that silent period where they're not expected to
right.
really produce the language. And I'm with you. The way that America and most countries go after language, it's teaching about the language, the grammar rules, and lists of vocabulary, which a lot of the vocabulary is not even practical. Um, but just because you know the words and you know the grammar does not mean you can put them together live into a sentence and put them together. And that's where the difference, I think, comes in. The kids know better. When I ask them on the first day, why are they here? They go to learn to speak and write the language fluently. So they know our job better than we are. None of the kids come in and say, so we can learn lots of vocabulary and lots of grammar. And I took French, German, and Spanish in school, and that's what we did: grammar and vocabulary, grammar and vocabulary. But when I look back at how I actually learned to actually use the language, it was always outside of the classroom. It was not in the
Hmm.
classroom. I had that background knowledge of the vocab and the grammar, but I don't even think the vocab helped more than the grammar did. The grammar has to be internalized because I always, it's even in America when you talk to English teachers, they don't always know what the grammar's all called, what the official words of it are. But if they can speak fluently, who cares if they can label it? It's like driving a car and building a car. Just because you know the parts of a car doesn't mean you can drive it. And just because you can drive a car doesn't mean you don't even need to know the names of the parts of the car to drive it. So they're two separate things. I 100% agree with you. And translation is a whole nother animal as well. It's a very different thing. And you have to think about the goal. And most of our kids, other than being forced there to go into college and to take it that way, they want to learn the language. They don't want to learn the grammar. They don't want to learn vocabulary. They want to be able to learn to actually communicate in the language. And I think comprehensible input really does help us with that. Great answer. Um, Let me see here what question I would like to ask next. So you talked a little bit about this earlier about mentor teachers that you are connecting with. So how do you connect with other CI teachers? How are you doing it? Do you have any in your area? Are you doing it solely online? Um, Conferences, workshops? How are you making those connections?
um, well, the podcasts um, was a world language classroom and the motivational classroom. So I followed them. This Liam Printer and Joshua Capral. And Joshua Capral offered like a session with a teacher to record it. So I did one of those and just listening to them every week when they have something new out. That really helps. And staying also connected on social media when after I found you, just listening in all the time. I don't have any mentor teachers close by. I think the closest would be Eric Richards down in St. Louis. They're doing as well. And then the Actful conference where I actually saw and actually talked to some people. Claudia Elliott was there, so I got to meet her there. She had some good suggestions. And in July, I will go in person. I try to go in person if I can to learn, get better at the CI because I'm still a beginner. And so yeah, just really listening in and being active, just talking to you.
Yeah, that's how we all started. I remember we had, before there was Facebook, we had something on Yahoo Groups. So when I
Oh
started
yeah.
way back in the early 2000s, there was called the More TPRS group, and then Yahoo Groups closed down and they moved everything over to Facebook. But that's where I got started because I had nobody in my school taught this way. I was the only one. I didn't have any training to begin with. I didn't get training until after my first school year of teaching. I did it in the summertime, so I was read every book, went online and got that kind of information to help me get through that first school year. And then in the summertime, I took my first training. And then I've been attending and presenting at different workshops. And my favorite one lately has been the Agen workshop, which is in the south of France. And what I
Mm,
love about that conference, if anybody who's watching, or Judy or anybody else gets a chance to go, it's about an hour outside of Toulouse. So you can fly into Toulouse and then take the train, and the train takes you right into downtown Agen, and you can walk to the hotel from there. Um, but what's so great about it, it's a wonderful week, but you have people from so many different languages. And the person who runs it is also named Judy, and she makes sure we have 2 to 3 hours for lunch every day, which is kind of the French way anyway. Um, and we're the conversations that we're having at the same table, they're in French and English and German and Spanish and sometimes Mandarin. We've had Turkish people, so we get all kinds of different languages that are all talking and communicating and having multi conversations in multiple languages, which I really like. Whereas when I've done NTPRS or the IFLT conference, those ones, the conversations are predominantly in English, and you don't get to really use your language with adults. And so that's what I really enjoy about that conference. Other than the obvious, the people and the learning, but it's that communication that we're actually putting into practice, because many of us are speaking languages that are not our native language, and getting actual to use it with real people in real context. And it's just a really amazing conference. It's always I believe it's always the third or fourth week in July, because the way the French schools and vacations happen. So it's somewhere in there. You can check it out, the Agen workshop, if anybody's interested. I highly recommend it. Plus, you can get a nice free, not a nice free, but a nice European vacation out of it as well. So great with mentors. Yeah, getting involved, finding a conference, finding a workshop, finding mentors, finding podcasts. And Liam, I met Liam Printer at the Agen workshop a few
did.
years ago.
Yeah,
So he goes there quite often. He hasn't come the last couple of years because he got married and a couple of things were happening. But
got a, he got
um,
kids,
yep, a lot of
and
things happened since
he's
he got
going to.
married. So, but he's an amazing
Yeah,
guy, and
yeah,
his motivational classroom podcast is incredible.
giving the students autonomy. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's hard, but we'll try.
Yes, exactly. And my last question I have for you, any advice that you would give um, to people who are thinking about making this jump or are new to it like you?
Um, yeah, find yourself some a podcast to listen to, but also do not try only like one or two different activities at first and see how the students respond, and don't switch the whole program right away. Um, and it really depends. And I don't know. In my school, I'm blessed that I can really do what I think is best. But a lot of schools I know you struggle with, you have to teach certain things. If you do have a textbook, I like what you said, you still use it, but you make it a little bit more CI. So you just take out a little bit here and there and focus on the CI and the communication parts. Then also remember, you are not somebody else. Everybody's unique and brings their own unique gifts in a classroom. I cannot be like the teachers before me. That's not me. But I bring so much more culture and authentic language in the classroom, and everybody has some kind of gifts, and that's we need to look at our strengths. What can we do as teachers? Just like we look at the students, what can you do with the language? What can we do to bring the language to them? So don't be overwhelmed. Don't be too anxious. We all make mistakes. Like the first year probably wasn't my best. um, we learn all the time. And also finding a community, I think, of other teachers, some who are who've done it for many years and reading a lot of books. I got a lot of books I read as well. But finding your community or your organizations to belong to. They offer a lot of trainings and online as well.
Yes, and Judy said some really good things there. If I can remember well, I should have written them down. But like one of the things she said that I really, really liked um, was starting small. Look for one activity that you can use that can replace something from your traditional way of teaching, and go slowly at step. I went in head first. Jackie, we talked about last week. We talked with last week. She also went in head first, went all in, but not everybody can do that or feels comfortable doing that. And so doing it step by step, saying, okay, there's this one activity I really don't like from the textbook. Let me replace it with this activity, and find ways to do that and do it step by step. One thing that I really liked, I got from another teacher, and his name is escaping me. I cannot think of his name. I can picture his face, but I can't think of his name. I'm really bad with names, so I apologize. But he wrote TPRS in a year. And what I liked about that, he focused on one skill in the book that you would work on until you felt comfortable with it. And then you went to the next skill. And then you worked on that till you got comfortable with it. And you worked on the next one. So after a whole year, you would have covered everything that you needed to do in the classroom. And so it was step by step, which makes it um, more inviting to be able to go through and not as intimidating. The other thing that she said was that it's not going to be pretty the first time you do it. Nothing is. Even when we teach, however we teach, our first year of teaching was always a mess compared to our second and our third and our fourth. And I remember Blaine saying this, and I don't know if it was his original quote or if it comes from somewhere else. So I'll give him credit, but it may be to somebody else. But he said, things worth doing are worth doing poorly at first. We're not experts at anything. Whatever we do in life, learning how to ride a bike, learning how to speak in front of people, learning how to teach, learning how to use CI, whatever we do in life, you start doing it poorly. But if it's worth doing in the long run, you'll keep on doing it and improve bit by bit by bit. So think about that. It was messy. I remember when I first started doing it, I was like Oprah Winfrey. I had these big cards with my story on it, printed in really big font so I could read the story. And I would only let my kids change the color of the eyes, the name of the character, and the color of the hair because I was not comfortable enough just free willing it off. I scripted out everything. I scripted out my questions. Everything was scripted out. I know Donna Tatum Johns, she did the same thing. She says it was a small stack of paper that she did. She wrote every word that she was going to say out. And it was not pretty, but my kids learned. And they're going to, Blaine also has said bad comprehensible input is still better than the textbook teaching with grammar and vocabulary if your goal is to get your kids proficient. So I love what Judy was saying there, and she's got some great advice. Yes, Whitney, thank you. Whitney, thank you for being my memory. She is absolutely right. It is Ben Slavic. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
I had completely forgot his name. He does have a website, benslavic.com. I don't know if he still has the TPRS in a year book, but two books I absolutely loved from him and learned a lot was TPRS in a year and PQA in a week. So I think his website is, let me put it in here, benslavic.com. I don't know if he still sells those two books, but I could not do PQA. I call it conversations, which helps me understand what it is better. Um, but I skipped that step in the TPRS way back in the early years. It wasn't until 4 or 5 years in after I read this book, I'm like, oh, that's what they're talking about because they never really demoed PQA in the demos. They did the story part, but not the PQA. And personalized questions, I had my idea of what those were from a textbook. The textbook personalized questions is very different from this. But when I was reading his book, I realized, duh, it's just a small talk. It's conversations with kids. And so once I did that, I understood it and I started doing it a lot. I just like calling it conversations because I think that's more relatable to what it is than it is. But thank you, Whitney, for reminding me Ben Slavic's name. I'm really bad with names. People don't even understand. Even my best friend will, like, I'll forget her name. I'm talking right to her. She'll go, and my name is, and she says her name because I always forget them. I'm really bad with names. It's gotten worse after I had COVID really bad. So I apologize to
Mm.
Ben, and thank you again, Whitney, for giving me that. Judy, is there anything else you'd like to say before we go, or is there a way that people can connect with you if you'd like to connect with them?
Um, One thing I wanted to share with my students, and they probably don't realize that first of all, we do the passwords each morning, and there are expressions they can use. But the other thing, there's expressions I use all the time, and I don't really teach those things. It's just I just say it, wie keine Ahnung, ich weiß nicht, oh meine Güte, and they come in or something happens, and they just say those things, and I didn't even teach it, and the other teachers hear it in the hallway when they say like, "Oh meine Güte, was ist los?" And this is the nice things about when I speak and that they really catch those things and they don't think it's really important, but they are. So I'm really happy about that. Um, you can find me on Facebook. I do have Music Lingua Quincy because I started with Music Lingua. That's my own teaching business where I also teach, give private lessons there as well. So it's Music Lingua Quincy on Facebook, and I think it's Frau Judy or Frau Judy on Instagram.
Awesome, awesome. I'll go ahead and I will add to the description your links in there so they can find you. Um, and yeah, I will also agree with the just using those expressions and the kids picking them up because I remember tampoco, which means either or neither in Spanish, and I used it and didn't realize how much I used it, and kids were just picking it up, and I'm like, "Where did you learn that? I never told you what that is." He goes, "But you use it all the time. The things that you just pick up because you just use them and you don't realize those a lot of those additional words, the words that aren't hard to teach, but they just come up naturally. I think of German particle words too, like doch and stuff like that, that are really hard to explain. But if you use them, then kids pick them up in a natural way. So those are
Yeah.
really great ideas. Well, I want to thank Judy for her time today. If anybody has any questions for her before we go ahead and put them in the chat. If you are watching them on the replay, go ahead and put them in the comments and I'll make sure I pass it on. We will have a replay of Mastering CI next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, an encore presentation that you can watch. And then we're going to be live again for CI Stories on February 6th. So keep that in mind. Again, same time, same channel, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And with that, doesn't look like any more questions have come up. Judy, again, thank you so much for hanging out with
Thank
us
you.
today. I really appreciate it, especially from, at least in America, representing a lesser taught language. German is not, at least in the West Coast, it is really rare to find anybody who teaches German anymore in the West Coast. Mandarin and Russian are more prevalent out here on the West Coast. So I really appreciate you representing German for us. And again, I thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You're
And
so
thank you
welcome.
for all you do for us teachers, for motivating us with little pieces of, little things we can do each week in our classrooms. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. You're welcome. Okay. Goodbye, everybody, and I will see you
Bye.
next time. Goodbye.